First thing we have to do is clean this up. So what I will have you do is go to Image, Adjustments, and then go Levels. It's really important to learn the keyboard shortcut Control L, or it's going to be Command L on a Mac. Once we have this and it comes in, we're going to set the white point for the paper. What this will do, it's going to remove any of the tonal range that's sitting on the back of the paper right here. I drew this with Vine Charcoal on 8 by 10 sheet of paper, and it was a cream colored paper. So when we extract the line, we don't want to have any tonal range at all. So cream actually has a little bit of a value. So what we want to do is select the white eyedropper. You can double check, but by default, it should be set to white. There are times when we would change this, but for now, we want it to be pure white. How do you know it's white? Obviously, it's on the top corner. If you look at CMYK, it's 0000. If you look at RGB, it's going to be 255, 255, 255. Okay, and then we look at the hexadecimal values, and it's all Fs. So let's go ahead and click OK. Once we have this, we take this eyedropper and we're going to drop this eyedropper right down on the paper where we want it to become white. So if I click here, this will now remove all of the yellow, and it now, where I indicate it here, that says that particular point of that value is now going to become white. Now let me give you an example of when I do this on, let's say, this dark area. So if I click here, it's saying take all of the black value that's underneath that eyedropper. When I click, you're going to turn that black, or that gray, excuse me, is another way to think of it. You're going to turn that into white. Now, it's doing it at the pixel level, so there's going to be little residual pieces on the outside, but this is really important, okay, to understand. Now, because it's still active, I can continually click in different sections to modify my white point. Now, if we also look, there's some dust and from the Vine Charcoal, it's around the outer edges of this. Also with the ring of the sketchbook, all of these things I want to get out of there. Okay, so what we can do is we can come over to our toolbar. If you hit the letter D, like in dog, it'll default to black and white colors. If you also click, and let me change the color here so you can see this. If I click on this icon here, that will also turn it to default. What we want to do is have white activated as our main color. So when I click this swap color, it will switch so white becomes the main color. You also have the option of clicking the letter X, and X will swap your colors as well. Okay. Now with white, I'm going to grab my pen here, and I'm going to use a Wacom tablet or Wacom, and I'm going to take this tablet, and I'm going to paint out with white all of these areas around the outer edge of the sketch to clean it up, to make sure it's precisely what I want. Okay, so see all this little residual stuff in here? I don't want that. Okay, so I'm just using a soft brush. Even with these little sketches or little lines on the outer edge, if I didn't want that, I would clean that up right now as well. This whole bottom half, I want this out of there. Put this up, make sure I have nothing on the bottom corner. Okay, so now that we have this, it looks pretty clean. Quick tip. If you see me when I'm scaling my brush up and down, okay, there's two ways to do this. All right. What I'm doing is I'm using a hotkey, and I designated the hotkey to the tip of my pen. With that, the hotkey on Windows is going to be Alt and right click. If you swipe sideways, okay, right and alt click. If you swipe sideways, it makes your brush larger. If you swipe up and down vertically, it makes your brush hard or soft. Okay, hard or soft. On a Mac, it's going to be as your keyboard shortcut. You can also use the bracket keys on your keyboard right next to the letter P. You can tap that, and this will also scale your brush up and down, okay? Now, before we extract the line, I usually will take a look at my sketch and make sure everything's exactly where I want. If there were any other little tiny things that need to be removed, any specks, dust particles and things like that, this is a perfect opportunity to clean that up. You can go over and use on your tool, we're going to use the spot healing brush tool. And now with this tool, I can go in and I can remove any little tiny specks in the middle of the sketch if I didn't want that. Okay, so here's a little messy, clean that up. That looks okay. Do I want this line there? Maybe not. Let's clean that up. Okay, a couple of specks here. Any of this in here, if I don't want those particles, I can just pull this out or go back to my brush and remove those areas so we get it nice and clean. Okay, so I look at it, feels pretty good to me. Actually, let's maybe pull that out of there. Okay, so it's good and ready to go. Let's get this line out of there. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go over to channels, click, we're gonna go to the RGB at the very top. We're gonna put our cursor right over the icon that shows the representation of your image. Okay, so you can see it's the channel thumbnail. And then we're gonna hold down Command on Mac, Control on Windows. You'll see the little icon that shows the marquee selection. That means it's gonna allow you to activate the pixels. Click on that. Right now, when we click on this, it's always going to select the white value in the image. So what we wanna do is invert that. So you're gonna go to Select, Inverse the selection. You can see the keyboard shortcut here. It's gonna be Shift Control I. On a Mac, it's gonna be Command Shift I. At this point, we're gonna go back to our layers. And what we're gonna do is, when we're active on the background layer, we're gonna do Command J or Control J. This makes your sketch active. Now it copied it and it pasted it on a new layer, and it's active, it's isolated. We can turn the background visibility off. We can create a new layer, a solid layer, and we're going to drag it and place it underneath so we can see what our sketch looks like. So we're going to adjustment layers, solid color. I recommend using white for now. Click OK. Drag underneath. Okay, now that we have the sketch, if you look at the visibility of the layer, you'll see it looks pretty faint. So if I turn this on, turn these two layers off, you can see what the sketch looked like previously. But when we look at it now, it doesn't look correct. So what we want to do is go to the sketch layer, make sure it's active. We're going to check on the preserve transparency box. Once we lock this, what this will do is anything that's gray and white, that's considered transparency. That means when it says lock, it means we will not be able to paint on anything that's gray and white. We will only be able to paint on what has pixels on that layer. So that's the sketch. So if we were to take this to black and we were to fill, you're going to fill with Alt or Option, hold that key down, and then you're going to hit Backspace or Delete. What this will do, it fills in the subtle tones that were being lost out, and now we have our sketch and it's isolated on this layer. Okay, we can now move this around, drag and drop, and place this on anything that we would like. What this also affords us the opportunity to do is if I wanted to change this to a color, let's say like red, sanguine, I'm going to use the same keyboard shortcut, Alt or Option, Delete or Backspace if you're on a Mac. This will now allow me to drop this in color. Okay, so now we have this and we can use this in any capacity that we want. So with this is a very powerful thing, because what it allows us to do is not use multiply. I use multiply, you should use multiply a lot when we have sketches, but there are times when we're gonna want to have our sketch have a very specific color to it, and we want it to not be transparent, which is what multiply will do. Very, very powerful. Let me give you one more option here. Previously, if we take Option, Alt, Delete, or Backspace, it'll fill the whole sketch with one color. If you want to go in specifically and change the color of, let's say, the face versus the head wrap, you can come in, pick your value and color, make sure your preserve transparency is still on, and you can take your paintbrush and you can come in and paint to isolate your color on certain sections of your drawing that you scanned in. One important detail to remember: if I take this sketch and I use a light value, it will actually lighten the value of your sketch. So you want to make sure that you're using dark enough value as well as color to make sure this fills in, okay, to appropriately, unless you want your sketch to be lighter. So let's say, for example, if I wanted sections of his beard to feel white or a lighter value, well, if I use this, and even if I go light gray, what this is going to do is going to lighten it up. Okay. Now, I wouldn't do that for this particular sketch, but just it does give you options. So very powerful, very flexible, and if you made a mistake, you can always go back to the original sketch and do this all over again to get it dialed in exactly the way you want. Well, let's recap. 1, we get our sketch in, we take that sketch, we clean it up using levels. Step 2, we want to select that sketch in our channels on the RGB layer. Step 3, we're going to Command J to copy and duplicate that selection from our layer and place on a layer on top. Lastly, you're going to hit Preserve Transparency, and you can fill using Alt or Option Delete, or you can hand paint the lines in to any color that you want. This will fill in any of the residual gray areas that are not completely filled tonally. Remember, there's levels to this. We just hit level 1. The next level is I'm going to show you how to break this down and go a little bit faster, meaning how fast? 1 click, boom, line is extracted out of there. But there's process to that. So I'm going to show you how to use the actions to create this whole process for you. So make sure you hit notification button. You can subscribe if you like, it's up to you. But definitely hit the notification so that way you can watch this next video and it'll be out next week. So in the meantime, be light, go out there, create some art, and enjoy 2024.